Amelia Earhart's name is legendary in aviation history, and she was more than just the first female pilot students learn about in school. Beyond her achievements as an aviator, she was a trailblazer, a risk-taker, and a relentless pioneer. In a time when the skies were seen as a man's domain, Amelia broke through those barriers, becoming the first woman to fly solo across the Atlantic, setting speed and distance records, and inspiring countless women to pursue aviation. She redefined what women could achieve in a cockpit and constantly pushed herself toward more daring feats. Her greatest ambition was to circumnavigate the globe. Little did she know that the very journey she had planned for years would lead to her infamous disappearance. Her legendary life led to a legendary fall. In this video, we'll trace Amelia's footsteps from her earliest days in aviation to the planning and execution of her ill-fated journey, leading us to the final moments we know of. And with recent discoveries shedding new light on her last flight, we'll explore what could be the long-awaited answers to the mystery that has captured the world's imagination for nearly a century. Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel if you enjoy mysteries, legends, and conspiracy theories about popular aviation icons and technology. Now let's take a look at how Amelia discovered her passion for flying. Amelia Mary Earhart was born in Atchison, Kansas on July 24, 1897. Throughout her childhood and teenage years, she aspired to lead the male-dominated career paths. Flying wasn't on her mind yet, but that was to change completely over the next decade. Soon after graduating from Hyde Park High School in 1916, she started her training as a nurse's aide from the Red Cross in Toronto, Canada. It would be during this time she came across wounded soldiers of World War I. Working in a voluntary aid detachment, Earhart heard stories from military pilots and developed an interest in flying. On December 28, 1920, she visited an aerial meet with her father and booked a passenger flight for $10. That 10-minute flight with Frank Hawks changed her life. She soon hired Netta Snook to be her instructor and had her first flying lesson on January 3, 1921. In mid-1921, she bought her first aircraft, a Kinner Airster, and made her first successful solo landing. On October 22, 1922, Earhart flew the Airster to an altitude of 14,000 feet, setting a world record for female pilots. On May 16, 1923, she acquired her pilot's license. In 1927, Amelia joined the Boston chapter of the National Aeronautic Association and was occasionally featured in newspapers as an advocate for aviation and female pilots. Just a year later, Earhart became the first woman to cross the Atlantic Ocean as a passenger in an airplane. She was dubbed Lady Lindy and Queen of the Air for her flying adventures and public services as an aviator. Yet determined to achieve even more, just a month later, she became the first woman to fly solo across the North American continent and back. During the early 1930s, Earhart was an official in many aeronautical associations, including the 99s, which was an exclusive organization for aspiring female flyers. On May 20th through 21st, 1932, Amelia Earhart became the first woman to fly solo across the Atlantic Ocean. She departed from Newfoundland and landed in a pasture in Northern Ireland. This act earned her the Distinguished Flying Cross from Congress, the Cross of Knight of the Legion of Honor from the French government, and the Gold Medal of the National Geographic Society from President Hoover. The site of her landing in Ireland now has a small museum, the Amelia Earhart Center. Later on, from 1932 to 1935, she did many solo flights, went on lecture tours, wrote about commercial flights and women pilots in various magazines, and promoted aviation in the public eye. All of this was in preparation for her biggest adventure, an adventure that put an end to such a legendary life. In July 1936, Earhart started planning to fly around the world. If she succeeded, she would become the first woman to do so. She chose the longest route at 29,000 miles for that feat. the nearest one to the equator. Lockheed Aircraft Company built a custom airplane, the Lockheed Model 10 Electra, for her, with extra fuel tanks and extensive modifications. Earhart dubbed the twin-engine monoplane her flying laboratory. She hired Fred Noonan as her navigator for this long journey around the world. They first attempted world circumnavigation on March 17, 1937, but abandoned the idea after some technical issues and a ground accident with the aircraft. After repairs were done, the second attempt began on May 20, 1937. Amelia and Fred boarded the plane and continued on the intended route from Oakland to Miami. From there, they continued along and stopped at several points for refueling and rest. The journey's famous touchdown points included Miami, Karachi, Bangkok, Singapore, Leh, and the notorious Howland Island. At this stage, about 22,000 miles of the journey had been completed. The remaining 7,000 miles would be over the Pacific. After 42 long days, Amelia reached Leh, New Guinea on July 2, 1937. All had gone well until now. Their next intended stop was Howland Island, 20 hours away. They had to stop there for refueling and were planning to continue from there to Honolulu, Hawaii. They took off from Leh at 10 a.m. The aircraft departed Leh with about 1,100 gallons of gasoline. The current headwinds were much stronger than anyone had anticipated. Earhart later informed radio personnel at Leh that she had been cruising at 7,000 feet and then 10,000 feet. This climb was simply an attempt to avoid dense clouds. By this time, the crew had only about 100 gallons of fuel left. For their trip to Howland Island, the U.S. Coast Guard had already sent the cutter Itasca to the island for communication and navigation support for the flight. The cutter was to communicate with Earhart's aircraft via radio, transmit a homing signal to help the aviators locate Howland Island, and use the cutter's boilers to create a dark column of smoke that could be seen over the horizon. Earhart was getting closer to Itasca, but neither the plane nor the ship could spot each other. Radio signaling back and forth wasn't working, and then gradually they started losing each other on the radio. At 6:14 a.m., Amelia stated that the aircraft was within 200 miles and requested that the ship use its direction finder to provide a bearing for the aircraft. Earhart began whistling into the microphone to provide a continuous signal for the ship's crew to use. The ship couldn't tune in to the aircraft's radio. Earhart kept on repeating the same request, but the ship's crew couldn't do anything. Then they received a heart-dropping message from Earhart. "Itasca, we must be on you, but cannot see you. Gas is running low. Been unable to reach you by radio. We are at 1,000 feet." This came at 7:30 to 7:40 a.m., while the aircraft had only a half hour of fuel remaining. She asked for Morse code signals, but still couldn't locate the ship. At 8:43 a.m., Amelia Earhart sent her frantic final transmission. "We are on the line 157-337. We will repeat message. We will repeat this on 6210 kilocycles. Wait." After that, no one ever heard from her. Her attempt to set a world record turned into a haunting and desperate search and rescue operation. 3 separate U.S. ships started searching for the plane, but none were successful. The official search lasted for about 17 days, covering an area of 250,000 square miles, costing the government around $4 million. The search was unsuccessful, and the pair was declared lost at sea. The U.S. government investigated the aircraft's disappearance and concluded that Earhart's plane ran out of fuel, with many speculating that it wasn't fully fueled at Leh. The aircraft crashed into the ocean. Both Earhart and Noonan supposedly died during or shortly after impact. But theorists speculate and argue that Earhart and Noonan might have landed somewhere on the line 157-337, and that would have been Gardner or Niku Maroro Island, a previously uninhabited island. In 1940, British colonial officer Gerald Gallagher found a campsite, partial skeleton, and some human belongings on that island. But they never found the aircraft nor any definitive evidence that could tie the findings to the crew. Years later, the International Group for Historical Aircraft Recovery decided to analyze the skeleton with better, modern technology. They concluded that the skeleton was of a short man or a tall woman, and Amelia was a tall woman. In 2003 and 2006, David Jordan, through his company Nauticos, extensively searched a 1,200 square mile area north and west of Howland Island with deep-sea sonar devices. The searches cost $4.5 million, but did not find any wreckage. In a potentially significant discovery in 2024, Deep Sea Vision, a Charleston, South Carolina company that operates unmanned underwater vehicles, found via sonar what it said were the remains of an airplane on the ocean floor. The object, resembling an Electra airplane, was located approximately 16,000 feet beneath the ocean surface, within 100 miles of Howland Island. On November 5, 2024, however, Tony Romero, head of Deep Blue Vision, confirmed to the Wall Street Journal that the object was a rock. Given they're out in the water anyway, right now the team plans to spend another month searching and scanning 1,500 miles of the ocean floor. In the end, all hope will never be lost for Amelia. Her story is one of bravery and mystery, capturing hearts worldwide for generations. Though we may never know exactly what happened on that last flight, her legacy lives on. She showed the world what it meant to dream big and face challenges head-on. As searches continue and new discoveries emerge, her story reminds us that some mysteries are bigger than the answers. Amelia Earhart will always be remembered as a symbol of courage and the unending human drive to explore the unknown. Which theory do you find the most logical? Let us know in the comments below.